We can analyze the second part of the play in the following way, that in the world of the play, the past and the present are blurred, in that people are strongly linked to their descendants, even in the world of the present. The revelation that Rolla is Madame Tortoise is at once the revelation of the fact that she is a descendant of an infamous prostitute named Madame Tortoise, and also she is Madame Tortoise in the living and the world of the dead. That suggests that character cannot escape their origins. Also, that no individual knows who they are, but they each carry the crimes, sins, and insecurities of those that came before them. As they begin to piece together what is happening at Deneby, Old Man and Agboreko begin to see that Aroni has summoned the dead to come back and haunt the mortals who have done them wrong in the past. There is an unfinished business to be reckoned with, an injustice that needs to be remedied. The dead couple is there to remind the four humans of the crimes they had committed in the past. The world of the dead has a lesson to teach the living. The play mixes contemporary modes of European writing with traditional representations of Nigerian rites. At Deneby, Agboreko, an old man convene, perform a divination and dance in order to welcome the dead. These rituals have historical and spiritual precedents, and while they do not necessarily appear to have a literary bearing on the plot itself, they affect the characters deeply and portend a reckoning that awaits them at the end. Soyinka also has blended humans with the supernatural spirits like Ishoro, Aroni, and Murete, moved through the world with an elevated power and a special place in the fabric of the forest, yet they squabble and have appetite just like human beings. Moreto loves getting drunk and expressing resentment at not being invited to the welcoming of the dead. Thus, we see that the world of the humans and the world of the gods are not so distinct, that those in power are just as fallible as their inferiors. The play's thematic narrative is the struggle between the humans and the natural world, as it is presided over by the gods and spirits. A god like Ishoro resents the humans for meddling with his forest, particularly resenting them for carving something in one of the tallest price trees in the forest. Meanwhile, Forest is more at peace with the human world, even if he too is meddling with it in his own way, by disguising himself as Obaneji and following Aroni's lead. After much confusion and chaos, we find out that Aroni and Forest Head are in full control of what is going on in the forest. When they speak to one another, they discuss the fact that their assemblage of mortals is completely intentional. Additionally, they reveal that they have made it so that Ishoro will follow them to the festivities to scare the mortals. Although some people say that Forest Head does not know what is happening, whereas all the activities are planned and organized by the two, what has seemed to be a variety of chaotic competing interests is in the fact being presided over and controlled by the forest spirits in their habitat. The play takes a turn when the onstage events actually transports the reader back to time, 8 centuries to the court of Mata Karibu. After so many allusions to the past lives of the characters in the play, the theatrical world brings us back to the actual events that had led to the unfinished business with the dead couple. The chaos in the forest is replaced with the order of the court, and we see the ways in which each of the 4 mortals had maltreated the 2 dead people, a captain in Mata Karibu's court and his wife. In the court of Mata Karibu, we see the conflict between the merciless king and the dead man who had been a soldier in the former's army. The main point of contention between them as the fact that the soldier has the audacity to think, and which is distasteful to the king. When accused of thinking, the soldier can only perform humility, saying, I plead guilty to the possession of thought. I did not know that it was in me to exercise it until your majesty's inhuman commands. In this case, we clearly see that the strict hierarchies of kingdoms are so stringent and violent as to be almost absurd. They do not tend to connect to reality with human suffering. In addition, that some men are allowed to think while others are not allowed to, but simply to execute orders handed down to them by their superiors. While the first part of the play uses highly figurative language and symbolic spiritual tropes to signify the world of the forest, the Court of Mata Karibu transports the reader into a much more recognizable monarchical structure in which unjust kings execute dissenters and courtly subjects cower at the power of the king. The sequence provides a great deal of context for the preceding events in the forest, in that it reveals once and for all the corrupt identities of the courtly subjects who will eventually become the four martyrs collected by Aroni and summoned to the forest to participate in the welcoming of the dead. We also see the context for the dead couple, suspension between the worlds of the living and the dead as their souls are restless until they seek justice. As dissenters in the Court of Mata Karibu, they were horribly maltreated for standing up for what they believed in and suffer grave injustices that are left unresolved. While the play is an indictment of an African nostalgia that ignores the problems of the past, that is to say, dictatorship, Wole Soyinka's work, and this play in particular, is held up as a masterful example of his incorporation of traditional Yoruba rituals, performance, and modes. These elements include the use of masquerades, dance, poetry, music, and the depiction of possession. Thus, the events on stage are not simply symbolic or figurative, but represents and recreate actual modes of performance that harken back to Nigerian history and tradition of the culture itself. Each of the characters, save for the spirit and the gods, has had some past experience that they carry with them into the theatrical present. In the world of the living, no one is ever just when they are born, because they carry the story of who they were before with them to the present. This continuity is something close to reincarnation, but almost more immediate, as the separate lives are even less distinct and the present identities are laid over past ones more indiscernibly. Much of the action in the play consists of non-literal, figurative, and ritualistic scenarios that harken back to traditional modes of Nigerian performance. In this way, the magical and supernatural elements are not necessarily labeled as such, but are simply extension of the literal action on stage, the rituals themselves in which plausibility is not a concern. When the spirits are summoned or characters become possessed, it is simply stated that this happens on stage. The action is often dramatic and vivid to imagine happening on stage, particularly in the final action or section. The stage world scenarios involving impressive technical elements. As the barrier between the spirit world and the human world breaks down, the stage direction becomes all the more impressive, demanding more and more stage magic and a greater level of illusion. The last section involves the merging of the humans and natural world. One by one, various natural elements of the earth, the sun, the water, and the ants, awake and address the forested. In this vision of the world, the elements and nature have their own poetic position within the universe, and they are personified in the language. The sun speaks of its own body. The spirit of volcano describes itself as belching and spitting. In this conception of the world, nature is as alive and embodied as the humans who inhabit it. The end of the play leaves the reader with the mortal characters rather than the spirit. Let alone, they experience rebirth, learning the lessons of their former lives and evolving into new people. They endure the intensity of the spiritual realm and deliver the epilogue together, a testament to the journey they have endured together as a group.